Thank you, everyone. So first for the announcements. In observance of Good Friday, the Township offices will be closed at 2 p.m. Friday, March 29th. The Peoria Fire Company will hold their Easter flower sale on Friday through Sunday, March 29th through 31st. Now for the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
Any comments to the minutes? Any citizen comments to the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The minutes are approved. Township business. The board met prior to this meeting to discuss legal and personnel matters in executive session. Now we'll go to supervisor liaison reports. Start with Sharon Humble, or Supervisor Humble, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'm going to start with the school district. The TE School District met on March 13th in a special meeting at Conestoga High School to discuss possible elementary school at 1200 Sweetsford Road in Berwyn. They received an update on the due diligence, the concept design for a new school, discussed approvals process, and outlined the schedule and costs of the process. The board determined that if they were not satisfied with the due diligence by the deadline of today at 5 p.m., the superintendent was authorized to extend the deadline for the due diligence or to terminate the agreement. I do not know what happened at 5 p.m. today, so I'm sorry. The school board is having their regular meeting tonight at 7:30 p.m., so I expect that that's when they will discuss that. The presentation slides and the video of this meeting are available on the TESD website at www.tesd.net. And again, starts tonight at 7:30. Second, TESD held a budget workshop immediately after the Finance Committee meeting on March the 11th, and it was also live streamed and also available on the TESD website. Beaumont Elementary students spent the winter months working on acts of service, including a service project for the Chester County Food Bank, in which they collected over 1,000 pounds of food. That's a lot for all those little guys to carry in, right? And they also made Valentine's to be included with all of the deliveries to Meals on Wheels people in the township to help brighten their days. Fourth, there are job opportunities in the district presently for experienced and certified special education teachers for the extended year program. Experience in reading, instruction, early childhood education, autism, phonological awareness, strategies, and differentiation of instruction is preferred, and it pays $50 per hour. And finally, spring break is next week, starts March 5th through March 29th, and also there will be no school on April the 10th. For the Parks and Recreation Board, the board met on March 13th last week at 7 p.m. and discussed, amongst other things, the police report for Wilson Farm Park, that there was a theft from a vehicle but no forced entry. So again, we want to remind people to be sure to lock their doors of their vehicles, even if they're just making a short trip in to do something, that unfortunately we have to be that diligent. Additionally, play structure there had graffiti from a Sharpie, and a trash can had been pushed over. I imagine the graffiti from the Sharpie, that would have been typical of my 3-year-old back in the day. But so we don't know if that's what it was, a little kid, or if it was something intentionally naughty. We received the Public Works Department report, which amongst other things included that all Wilson Farm Park restrooms are now open, and that all of the water fountains in the township will not be open until the danger of the freeze has passed. In old business, the board received a presentation and handouts regarding additional skinned field updates in the township for the purpose of softball. The presentation was provided by the TE Thunder softball group, which is many girls from ages, I think it's 9 up through into high school. And the concern was that there are not enough softball fields in the township for their use. And they were asking about the possibility of having one of the fields at Mill Road Park converted to a softball field, as well as the costs. We also discussed whether the baseball field at Cedar Hollow Park is actually ripe for being skinned for softball, as its use is not what it used to be in several years. There are some issues with that field, in that there is a broken sprinkler system all underneath the dirt and the grass that would have to be removed. Finally, we discussed and reviewed the Friendship Park Master Plan, and to get proposals for updating it. It's a cost that was taken very seriously, and that I believe Joe DeRocco had said it is possible, it's in the budget, that we can do that. And so the board voted unanimously to ask the township to approve having the Friendship Park Master Plan updated. So that's the extent of my update for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Humble. Supervisor Holt.
Good evening. I attended the Tredyffrin Historical Commission on March 14th meeting at 7 o'clock, and I got to meet two very enthusiastic volunteers, Eric Williams and Janice Olson. Learned a little bit about their background, their passion for our community, and the historical resources within it. And I'm proud to make a motion to appoint both Eric Williams and Janice Olson to the Historical Commission.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
Any comments? Public comments?
Hello, Rob Williams, Chair of the Historical Commission. We're very excited to have both Mr. Williams and Ms. Olson join. We have two fine educators joining us, which is what we need for the township right now, to explain our resources to the community. So we're very fortunate and excited to have them join. So thank you.
Rob, the other thing I would say is good job recruiting, because they're both super enthusiastic and seem like great additions. So congratulations.
Good. They'll be great additions. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's it for tonight.
Thank you. Supervisor Gussie?
I do not have any reports tonight.
Supervisor Bhaskar?
The Library Board of Trustees met on February 22nd at Paoli Library. And in news, the elevator at Stratford Library has been fixed, which is nice to those who were concerned about it. The new chiller has arrived at the Stratford Library, but there's some component needed before it can be connected. Overall, library attendance continues to increase, especially at Paoli. It was flat year over year at Stratford. And program offerings and attendance also grew significantly in January. Now, the Red Fox bookstore has donation days every month this year, and 4 book sales planned this year, including one for the weekend that just passed. The next meeting of the Library Board of Trustees will be on Thursday, March 28th at 7 p.m. at the Stratford Library. And we have, I'll just note, we have another agenda item further down the agenda for National Library Week, but we'll get to that in due course of time. The Environmental Advisory Council met on February 27th, and Haverford students Owen Cross, Adelma Argueta Roman, Kristen Hung, Wyatt Mattison presented the summary of a fall 2023 study of Krabby Creek Park's stream chemistry and woodlands, and they're students of Professor Jonathan Wilson, who's the chair of the EAC, and they will be doing I was really impressed with the presentation, and I invited them to come present to the board, so they'll be coming up shortly. And then also Dale Klein, Brandon Banaszewski, and Samantha Whiteside were nominated as associate members of the EAC, and they will be voted on at the March meeting. Earth Day tree planting in Wilson Farm Park in the Swale area is planned for Friday, April 19th and Saturday, April 20th, and if you're able to volunteer, please do. A Krabby Creek macroinvertebrate study is planned for Saturday, May 18th, and a spring garlic mustard pull planned for a date to be determined. And last year, some volunteers reported success with pesto they made from garlic mustard that they pulled. So, please consider that. The Stratford Park rain garden maintenance was planned for the week of March 15th and went off well. Potential locations for the 2024 spring garden rain installations are under consideration. The EAC approved printing and mailing a letter to tree companies about our woodland conservation ordinance. And at this point, Tredyffrin has recycled enough plastic bags, you've seen the collection bins, to earn another bench from Trek. So the EAC is discussing, where to put it and whether possibly we could put, badges on the benches. And the tentative date for the annual Roots Festival is September 15th. So the next meeting of the EAC will be on Tuesday, March 26th at 7 p.m. in the community room next door. Moving on, the Paoli Task Force met on Thursday, March 7th. PennDOT was in attendance, but Amtrak neither attended in person nor remotely. So PennDOT at this point has completed demolition of the acquired buildings in Paoli, and those of you who've driven by there probably see a lot of places where there used to be buildings. Now, the construction agreement between PennDOT and Amtrak is essentially, the signature copies are being reviewed by the legal departments, but the right-of-way agreements are still being worked on, and those are kind of critical because, PennDOT requires right-of-way for the construction to move ahead. And furthermore, even if the agreements are all in place, there will be no construction until Amtrak gets a crew ready to support the construction, because they only have 2 crews that can do bridges in the main line. So fingers crossed the crew will become available in 2025, but that is fingers crossed. 2025. 2025, next year. So that's, I know that replacing that bridge has been under consideration for at least 25 years, if not longer. And moving on, the next meeting of the Traffic Committee will be the day after tomorrow, here, Wednesday, March 20th at 7:30 a.m., and that's in the morning, here in Keene Hall. And thank you, Chair Miller.
Thank you, Supervisor Bhaskar. Supervisor Johnson-Pugh.
I have no reports right now.
Thank you. Supervisor Wasaki. Murph, can you hear us? Supervisor Wysocki, can you hear us? I don't think he can. Hang on, everybody. All right, everybody. So he has nothing to report except there's a Planning Commission meeting this Thursday at 7 p.m. Sorry about that, a little technical problem, but we're making it work. Those are the supervisor liaison reports. Next on the agenda is the 2023 Krabby Creek Study Review, and I'll pass this off to Supervisor Bhaskar.
So thank you. At this point, I'd like to invite Professor Wilson and the students to come up here, and if we can get the slides up on the video.
Okay, you all ready? Okay. Good evening, members of the Board of Supervisors and Township staff and the public. Thanks for inviting us to come here and speak. My name is Jonathan Wilson. I am a resident of Rose Lane in the Township. I am a faculty member at Haverford College, and I'm also chair of the EAC. For the last several years, and building on work that has actually been going on for more than the last decade, a group of volunteers has been studying water pollution in the township with particular emphasis on Valley Creek, which is an exceptional value watershed in the state of Pennsylvania. And this group includes Valley Forge Trout Unlimited, the Valley Creek Restoration Partnership, and many other groups, including the EAC. And through this work, we've identified a local stream, Krabby Creek, which flows through Krabby Creek Park as a key location in some of the changes that we've observed in Valley Creek. And the health of the water and the woodland in Krabby Creek are key indicators of the overall environmental health in the township. As part of this effort, my class of 21 environmental studies students at Haverford College and Bryn Mawr College studied the water quality and the forest composition of Krabby Creek Park in the fall semester to aid in future work in the township. And 3 of the students are here to offer a report on their work on the water and the woodland in Krabby Creek Park. And I'd like to introduce them to you. There's Adelma Argueta Roman, who's a senior environmental studies major at Haverford. There's Owen Cross, a junior environmental studies major at Haverford, and Kristen Hung, who's a junior environmental studies major at Bryn Mawr. And I'm going to turn this over to the students to share with you what they've learned.
Hello, everybody. First off, thank you so much for having us. It's an honor to be here. And I'm just going to kind of jump in. So as an introduction and background to our study, Krabby Creek Park is a 48-acre park. It's located here, and it contains the headwaters of Krabby Creek, which flows into Valley Creek, and then ultimately Valley Creek flows into the Schuylkill River. As Dr. Wilson mentioned, it contains a very well-preserved grove of secondary forest that's very notable for the presence of a lot of native species and relatively few non-native species. So over the last 20 years, salinity concentrations in Valley Creek have risen. Oh, thank you. They have been rising a lot, and this rise threatens the health of the aquatic ecosystem. As Dr. Wilson mentioned, Valley Creek isn't just an average stream in your backyard. It's under the highest level of protection from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. It's also a Class A trout fishery, if that means anything to anybody. It's a very well-protected, pristine waterway. So our work sought to tackle 2 main questions. The first being, what is the source of the high chloride concentration, which is a major contributor to salinity in Krabby Creek? We also aimed to construct a chloride conductivity calibration curve to allow us to estimate future changes. We also looked at the major components of the Krabby Creek forest, and we went to measure the size and age of the trees that we looked at. So, how did we do this? First, tackling water quality. We did 1 major survey of the park on October 1st, 2023. We used a handheld conductivity probe to measure conductivity in microsiemens and temperature in degrees Celsius of the stream in various locations. We also used salinity tabs to measure the chloride ions in parts per million in the stream. We recorded the latitude and longitude at every single collection point, and we connected these measurements to Mayfly real-time data that's logged by a data logger installed by Dave Manning. We also looked at forestry health. We did 2 surveys of the park on October 31st and November 7th of 2023. In these, we identified trees by eye, thanks to our education in our environmental studies classes, and also using an app called iNaturalist, which is quite a cool app. If you want to look into it, you just take pictures of trees and it tells you what it's likely to be. We also measured the diameter at breast height of all of our trees that we looked at, and we also tagged all of these trees to ensure we don't duplicate them and also to allow us to map where the different trees are throughout the park. Now Kristen is going to tell everybody about our water quality results.
Yeah, hi everyone. So one thing we wanted to look at was how conductivity and chloride concentrations were spatially distributed throughout Krabby Creek. So the first way in which we examined this was we decided to create graphs showing the relationships between conductivity and latitude and chloride and latitude. As you can see, you can observe sort of a slight trend in increasing salinity when you move upstream in the creek. But as you can see from these points on the left and towards the middle, there isn't like an exact model fit, and I'll explain this more on the next slide. So we decided to input the data we collected on water quality into GIS, and this allowed us to see that latitude wasn't the sole indicator of water quality in terms of spatial distribution. As you can see on the map, there are contrasts in chloride concentration and conductivity between the different inlet branches. Particularly, the west and south branches have the highest conductivity and chloride concentrations, while the east and southeast branches have the lowest concentrations. As Owen mentioned, we decided to construct a calibration curve that allowed us to convert real-time conductivity data readily into chloride concentration, because chloride concentration is difficult to measure in the field. So this is the curve that we have, and this is the equation that we have right here. So last fall, there were 2 periods with relatively little rain. These occurred in September and November. And because of minimal influence from rain, we were able to get a sort of baseline average of conductivity, and from there we were able to find a baseline chloride concentration using the calibration curve that I just showed. This gave us a baseline of around 174 parts per million, or 705 microsiemens, which is already over the Canadian threshold for stream toxicity, which is 120 parts per million. As you may remember, we had some snowstorms throughout the months of January and February. From these snowstorm events, we can see peaks and ebbs in chloride and conductivity in Krabby Creek. In particular, I want to point out 2 dates, January 6th and February 13th, where conductivity reached 3,330 microsiemens. This translates to a chloride concentration of 815 parts per million, which is already approaching the EPA threshold of 860 parts per million and well above the exposure threshold for Canada at 640 parts per million. And now I'll hand it over to Adelma.
Hello, everyone. So we're going to start with the figure on the left, which is a continuation of the discussion we just had. And on these dates, we had a mixture of both the snow, sleet, and rain. And it's indicative of what you would expect from a mixed storm or precipitation. You would see a rapid rise as the road salt is getting sucked into the stream, which is increasing the chloride levels in it. But because of the heavy rain that followed this event, we had also a rapid fall as the chloride levels were getting washed out. And on the left, we have what is typical for a snow event, where we have also another rapid rise of chloride levels, as again, the road salt gets pulled into the stream, and a more gradual decline of the chloride. It looks a little funky just because there was so much snow that day that the Mayflower monitor stopped working. But trust me when I say this is what you would expect for a snow event, a rapid rise and a plateau as the chloride levels eventually drop. The next part was looking into the trees or the canopy of the forest. And we focused on 200 trees around that were proximal to the stream from the south to the north end. And we found that more than 50% of them were tulip trees, but most of them are native species. I do want to put out there that there is no relationship between the salinity of the stream and the high abundance of tulip trees. Tulip trees are just they're pioneer species and they're very productive, and that probably contributes to the fact that we have so many of them. But rest assured, there's no relationship between the salinity and tulip trees. And because we were also doing DBH, we were able to get diameter and to see how big the trees were. Most of them were just under 50 centimeters wide, with the majority of them being well below that. And we have trees even as big as 125 centimeters. And these were the tulip tree and the red oak. On the figure on the on the right, you can see the distribution of these. The south end of the park, where used to be a bridge, there we have more of a distribution of younger, smaller trees, but at the north end, we have more larger trees. With this data, we were able to estimate tree age. Disclaimer, a lot of things can affect how large a tree is a DBH, which then affects the tree age that we estimate for it. So you can take this with a grain of salt. But the distribution of tree ages is indicative of a second growth forest. And we even have trees that are a lot older than 100 years old, which is really impressive. And the oldest tree is a beech tree. And a lot of our younger trees is the catalpa, which is a native species. And it just indicates how healthy our forest is if our native species are reemerging in our forest.
Yeah, so taking away some big picture conclusions from our study as a whole, the source of the high chloride observed in Crabby Creek is groundwater and runoff that supplies those west and south branches of Crabby Creek that Kristen highlighted on the map. Looking at those big snowstorm events, peak chloride concentration exceeded 400 parts per million of chloride ions during the significant January snowstorms, and even exceeded 800 parts per million for a brief period. And this is in the range that causes acute toxicity in some ecosystems. The survey of 200 trees documented exceptional sizes and ages of many native trees, including some older than 100 years. This indicates a healthy secondary forest in the park. We also looked at the distribution of the size of the trees, with the largest trees standing in the downstream floodplain, the north end. The stream flows south to north, near the northern edge of the park. And we couldn't do this without some appropriate thank yous. So some thank yous to the Enviro DIY installation and maintenance team, the Township Public Works for allowing us to walk through their park for a couple afternoons in a row, the Trout Unlimited Braces Stream Grant, Marshall Reynolds, the Green Valleys Watershed Association, the Stratton Water Research Center for support, Ann Murphy, Dave Bressler, and all the others who helped push this project forward. And most importantly, a thank you to Dr. Wilson for making this all happen and getting this all put together. And that's it from us tonight.
Yep. Thank you very much. This is very educational. Does anyone from the board have any questions or comments?
I did. First of all, thank you so much for this presentation. I think that it's extraordinary. My mother was an earth science teacher in the 80s. My sister has been a science teacher for the last 22 years. I was very interested to read it, and one thing that I did have a question about that I didn't know was with the salinity concentrations, and you know which part of the stream. Is this salinity that's coming from the salts used on the streets or sidewalks or driveways? Is that, you know, like, what's the ultimate source of this salinity?
That's what we're trying to figure out. This is definitely, a lot of it is definitely coming from like de-icing roads, but I think Professor Wilson actually went to try to find the source, and I think we are hypothesizing that it's coming from someone's like backyard. They might have like dumped a huge bag of like salt, or just there might be just like a huge source of salt near the upstream area. So yeah, we're currently trying to figure out the localized source for Crabby Creek specifically, but we know just in general that salinization of freshwater bodies is mainly caused by road salts.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the public or anyone online? Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming out and for all the work.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a tough one to follow, but we have a finance update from Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to keep this a little brief. We have a lot going on right now. I'll start with our audit. Auditors are actually starting today. They'll be out, for the next 2 to 3 weeks conducting field work. At that point, then they'll go back and we'll pull together the financial statements and everything. And then we'll probably be back in front of the board for a presentation of the audit sometime this summer. We are in the midst of implementing our new general ledger software and ERP solution there. So we originally were expecting to go live probably in the next month, but again, these things always hit bumps along the way, and so we're probably looking at May at this point. But they have all of our data. We're working through it. The next big milestone will be for us to make sure that the data that was transferred and pulled over is correct, and before we move over. Real estate tax bills are out. They're coming in. Our discount period for those who haven't paid yet ends in the end of next week, the 31st. So take advantage of that if you haven't already. Our sewer bills are out as well. We're starting to see those come in and collections. Technically, those aren't due until May 1st, but again, I don't wait until the last minute to pay those. And then the last big one that I've been working with Mr. Burgo on is our reimbursement from the Howellville Road Bridge. We still have about $2.9 million outstanding from PennDOT. Steve must have sent, I think, like 15 iterations of the invoices and detail to PennDOT. Tim Stevenson's been a pleasure to work with, but we're hopeful that we'll have that money back into the township in the next 60 days if we're lucky. But we keep working at that. That's what I have for tonight.
And when would the audit be completed? When are you going to present that?
I would expect that sometime over the summer, June, July at the latest.
Any other questions for Mr. Draco? Thank you very much. Next, we have a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-11, recognizing April 2024 as Pennsylvania 811 Safe Digging Month. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and public. This is pretty straightforward. This is Safe Digging Month, and for those who don't know, if you're doing any kind of project where you might be digging to putting a planting bed in your front yard or doing something in your backyard, before you dig, you should always call 811. That's a number where they will confirm there's any underground utilities. There's a lot of utilities that you may not know are on your property. It's just a safety thing to do to make sure if you're digging up ground, you call 811. They'll mark out if there's a sewer, electrical line, gas line, anything that could be at risk if you start digging. So it's just a reminder, April is the month for safe digging, and to remember to use 811 before you start digging in your yard. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board, public? Thank you, Mr. Martin. This is a roll call vote. Oh, I need a motion, a second. Thank you. All right, do I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Now it's a roll call vote. Sorry about that. Supervisor Humble.
Aye.
Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Gussie.
Aye.
Supervisor Bhaskar.
Aye.
Supervisor Johnson Pugh.
Yes.
Supervisor Wasaki.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Next is a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-12, approving the 2024 revised fee schedule. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Staff has some recommended changes to the fee schedule. The big one is with our engineering escrow. There was some confusion. Again, we were processing stormwater and grading permits a certain way when it was just Steve by himself. Now that we have another staff member, we're able to change how we need to process those and now only require escrow under certain circumstances. So that's the big change. And then just some cleanup items as well that we included and worked with the solicitor on. So happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions? The staff, any questions from the public? Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
This is also a roll call vote. Supervisor Humble.
Aye.
Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Gussie.
Aye.
Supervisor Bhaskar.
Aye.
Supervisor Johnson Pugh.
Aye.
Supervisor Wasowski.
Aye.
Supervisor Miller votes aye. Motion carries. Next is a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-13, authorizing signature authority for a DCNR grant for the bike pump park. Mr. Duraco.
I believe the detail is just given by the motion that we're seeking. This is just to try to get a grant for the bike park, another grant for the bike park. It'll allow, I believe, the township managers the signature so that way we can process this.
Thank you, Mr. Duraco. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any comments from the board? I believe we do have a comment from the public.
Yeah, let me just thank you again for the support you've given us before. We were somewhat successful with the grant that you approved last year through the Department of Environmental and Economic and Community Resources. This one through DCNR requires a 50% match. Because we were successful in getting the grant last year, we can now apply for the grant this year, which explains the timing, and hopefully that'll fill the gap that we still need to cover to enable us to build the park.
You need to introduce yourself and all that.
I'm sorry, Arthur Zadrozny, representing the Chesterbrook Civic Association, resident at Painters Lane.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask you for recognition so I can speak? I just want to say, Mr. Zadrozny, I continue to be just amazed at how great this has worked out with Chesterbrook Civic Association, working with these kids to help make a bike park a reality. I know that before, in the past, they had been biking at places not permitted for it in Chesterbrook, and I think most organizations would have just told them, get off my lawn, basically. But y'all instead got together and found a way to help them, rather than just saying, get out of here, but to try to help them make this a reality. And I'm just really impressed by that, and I just want to thank you again.
Thank you, Supervisor Humble. Any other questions or points or questions? Any other public comment? This is a roll call vote. Supervisor Humble.
Aye.
Supervisor Holt. Aye. Supervisor Gussie.
Aye.
Supervisor Bhaskar.
Aye.
Supervisor Johnson Pugh.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki. Murph? Oh, he just raised his hand or something. Supervisor Wysocki, can you hear us? I'm going to assume he votes aye. Can we do that? I vote aye, and let's say he passed, given he can't vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion carries. Next is a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-14, proclaiming April 7th through 13th, 2024 as National Library Week. Mr. Martin.
I'll just talk very briefly. I'm sure Bhaskar would like to comment. I see some people from the library. Yes, so April 7th through the 13th will be National Library Week. This is obviously our public meeting before that date, so we need to do it tonight to recognize the importance and the pivotal role that the library plays in our community and for our kids and our seniors and everyone that participates in our community. So it's a great, easy resolution, and hopefully you will support it tonight.
Things look pretty good. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Do I have any supervisor comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Miller. So basically, every year, the American Library Association designates a week as National Library Week. And this is especially important in these times because, by the way, this year's theme is called Ready, Set, Library, and I'm not going to bore you by reading the entire resolution, but I'll just throw in a few words, which is that, at least to me, the libraries are very important because they're places that open minds, and, we certainly live in times when there are people who would like us to have an open mind as long as we're open to what they're saying and not to things that other people are saying. And so that our libraries are important. They really, do focus on that aspect of opening minds. Our libraries also have evolved with the time. So, for example, in the last year, we opened a makerspace at the Stratford Library. And I certainly would like to invite people to go out and take a look at that. We have not just books, but a lot of e-books and programs and events. So our Tredyffrin public libraries, and there are two, there's a Stratford Library and a Paoli branch. They really are a treasure. And I'm really happy that we're able to designate the week of April 7th through the 13th as National Library Week. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bhaskar. Any other comments?
Yes, I have one. I, again, go with what Bhaskar says. The library is a place that opens minds and it lets you dream. And it is a place that you can go to and pick up something that lets you see the world in a way that you may not see it on television or hear it on a radio, that you read it and you interpret it, and from that book lets you see what you may want to see. I'm specifically happy about the Stratford Library because it's a place that I wander around in and get lost and sometimes have to remember, oh, I'm in the library, you're not in a bookstore, in your bedroom, go home. Take the book and go home. I'm with Bhaskar also. I'm glad that from April 7th through the 13th, that the libraries are being recognized, and we in Tredyffrin want people to come and read and have an open mind to whatever they want to have, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson-Pugh. Anybody else? Any public comment?
Stacy Stone, Tredyffrin, and I'm on the libraries board. Thank you. In 2000, the ALA's 12 Ways Libraries Are Good for the Country offered a gift of 12 ideals toward which we strive. And you've talked about many of them in your comments. They inform citizens, break down boundaries, level the playing field, value the individual, nourish creativity, open kids' minds, build communities, make families friendlier, offer sanctuary, and preserve the past. But finally, libraries offend everyone. That's from the ALA. It says, children's librarian Dorothy Broderick contends that every library in the country ought to have a sign on the door reading, "This library has something offensive to everyone. If you are not offended by something we own, please complain." This willingness and duty to offend connotes a tolerance and a willingness to look at all sides of an issue that would be good for the nation in any context. It's particularly valuable when combined with the egalitarianness and openness that characterizes libraries. So thank you so much for designating April 7th through 13th as Libraries Week, and please everybody come out to the library and be offended.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments? All right, this is a roll call vote. Supervisor Humble.
Aye.
Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Gussie.
Aye.
Supervisor Bhaskar.
Aye.
Supervisor Johnson-Pugh.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Aye.
All right, and I vote aye. The motion carries. Thank you. Now I have a motion to approve the results of the sale of used AV equipment. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gene's been working on downsizing some of the excess stuff that he has back there. I believe the results were attached to the memo. Happy to answer any questions.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any supervisor comment or questions? Any public comment or questions? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Motion to approve proposal from AVT for Keene Hall upgrades. Mr. Oh no, I missed one. I'm sorry. Motion to approve Robert Ganter Contractors, Inc. for Public Works Roofing Project. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This will be for the two larger roofs down at the Public Works since we did the salt roof last year. These prices are established under the the Master Intergovernmental Cooperative Purchasing Agreement. Some of the things this will cover is removing the existing roof panels, provide a dumpster to clean it up, install installation, install continuous anchors, provide and install the new Garland span standing seam metal roof system, provide and install snow guards, install new aluminum gutters and downspouts. This will also come with the manufacturer's 30-year no dollar limit warranty.
Thank you, Mr.
We
Fitzgerald.
did receive prices.
Yeah,
I like that one. They ranged anywhere from $1,073,081 to $1,951,960. We are recommending the Robert Ganter Contractors of $1,073,081. The only other things that you'll notice on the paperwork, it says for unforeseen site conditions, we got a unit price for that, and that's for any additional work for wet insulation or replacement of any deteriorated nailers. This project would be financed from the 2024 bonds.
Now, thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Yeah, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions from the supervisors? Any public comment or question? Mr. Fitzgerald, how old is the current roof?
It's as old as the building.
That's what I thought, yeah. Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now the motion to approve proposal from AVT for Keene Hall upgrades. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is one of the complaints we get a lot is the audio in Keene Hall here. And so this is in the budget to replace the microphones and relocate. There's a rack that nobody can see, but poor Pat has to deal with under her leg, so she can't actually get under the dais the whole way. We're actually going to relocate that rack to a better location. And so this is, the pricing is $33,416.70 and is in the 2024 capital plan.
Thank you, Mr. Duraco. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any supervisor comments or questions?
Yeah, I had a question actually, which is that, I realize that this equipment is old and we don't get spare parts and we don't get replacements, and so it does need to be replaced. But I'm just wondering whether there's anything else we can do to improve the acoustics in the room, because, for example, when Ms. Stone was speaking just now, it was really hard to understand what she was saying with the acoustics.
Yeah, we're always looking. The panels above us are sound baffling. Again, having a large open roof doesn't help. We'll talk to Mike to see if there's some other things that we can do to improve it. We're hoping that part of it is the microphone system itself provides a lot of feedback, so hopefully the new system will have less feedback and make it easier for everybody to hear.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
Any public comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Yeah, thank you. Motion carries. A motion to authorize staff to advertise and receive bids via municipal bid for the sale of excess vehicles and equipment. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Staff is requesting board approval to put the following vehicles and equipment out to bid on municipal bid. Once these vehicles and equipment are advertised, the winning bids will be brought back to the board for the approval to sell. We have 9 pieces of equipment, 2017 Tahoe, a 2019 Tahoe, a 2015 Tahoe, a 2015 Ford Police Interceptor, 2 interior light bars, 1 Code 3 light bar, a custom-made box for a Tahoe, a 2008 Ford F550 dump truck, and a 2011 lawnmower.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Here a second?
Second.
Any comments from the supervisors? Any public comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Motion to authorize staff to complete necessary paperwork to allow the township to host the Mainline Music Fest at Wilson Farm Park and to authorize beer garden and beer sales. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is something that staff's been working with Supervisor Wysocki on for the last couple of months. What's now going to be called the Mainline Music Fest, formerly known as the Paley Jazz Fest. Blues, my apologies, Blues Fest. Last year they held it in Wilson Farm Park. They're looking to expand the event, make it, bring it back to the glory days when it was in Paoli. Ken Klaus, we've been working with him as well. He's here to answer any questions, but, they're looking to partner with the township on this event. And so we've, took it to the Finance Committee who supports the idea and recommends moving forward with this. This is going to require some involvement from, police in terms of extra duty, as well as some public works employees. And so, we're anticipating that cost of between $5,000 and $10,000. We'll know more once we really start working with Ken and his people a little bit more on the actual event. But for now, in terms of getting them what they need to get going and planning, because it is, I believe, the last week of September, that last Saturday, and so we want to try to make this a successful event for them as well. And so I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Duraco. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any supervisor comment? What is the actual date? We should be telling people if we're going to do this.
September 28th.
28th, okay, thank you. And any other supervisor questions?
Just know that it's a great community event.
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chairman. Can you get, David, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Murph. Go for it. Go ahead.
Yeah, please. I don't have any questions. I'm having technical difficulties here, and I hit my video, everything goes down. But other than that, there's no problem here. I am away. But this planned event, Mainline Music Fest, is just continuing and expanding the Paoli Blues Fest and bringing it back to and making it even better its former self. And Wilson Farm Park presents a great venue for this event. And Ken Klaus and others have come to us to work with them. And we are in the process, and we have preliminary numbers to move forward. And it'll be a great, as I see it, a great event. Other communities in the region have these events, and they all seem to be a tremendous success and benefit for their various communities. So I think it's wonderful, and we'll continue working on this. So there it is.
Thank you, Supervisor Wysocki.
I do got a question. I'm reading here where it talks about authorize a beer garden and beer sales. This is an all-day affair, am I correct?
Yes, 12 to 6.
12 to 6. So how are we going to, I'm trying to think of the word I'm going to say, to make sure that the beer sales are being sold to people who are over, are they going to ask to show ID, or how's that going to work?
Whoever we end up having at the event to sell the alcohol has a license through, the Liquor Control Board. They're obviously, they'll be insured. They indemnify us as part of the agreement, which we'll get. And so it's not on the township, it's on the, provider of the actual alcohol to monitor that. And plus we require essentially a designated area for people to enjoy their adult beverages in. They can't, we're not supposed to just be walking around the park with it.
Okay, so if God forbid, if anything happened with someone, we're not responsible. The person who would be selling the product would be responsible.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments? Matt, do you want to say? You good? Public comments, yeah. Let's hear, yeah.
So I'm Ken Claus. I'm the founder and the president of the now Mainline Music Festival. So Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, or Chairwoman, and all members, esteemed members of the board and administrators, I can't thank you enough. This is a huge opportunity for us together. This is something we're doing as a community event. We need each other for this. And I'm so glad that you saw the wisdom in working together to really benefit our community and enlarge this event to include a more diverse and interested public, as well as an opportunity, which I started in 2008 as a means of bringing the community and businesses together. Having watched so many people walk to and from the train station and never stop in really to see who their local stores are and even or other neighbors. So this is really important. Joe, I want to thank you so much. Murph, thank you so much for Mr. Wysocki, I should say. Thank you so much for your support. And we look forward to a really wonderful event on September 28th from noon to 6 p.m. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Any questions?
I would like to say thank you for changing the music format to be broader. It appeals to more people. I think with the blues, the blues, you're down. And I think, opening up to broader music choices will involve the younger people more and others with other music tastes. So I'm looking forward to it. That's my birthday weekend. So.
Well, we'll have a special treat for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? besides my birthday weekend too with Sharon's, so I'll be there also. But let me just ask you a question. Will there be opportunities for businesses to come and maybe set up vending or things of that nature? Is there a way that if they wanted to do that?
Absolutely. We have, every year we invite, we have our sponsors, of course, but then we have individual vendors that we have anywhere from 17 to 30 years. Some years we've had 50 back in the heyday. When we're getting back on our feet now, which have been everything from people that make candles to local politicians to charity events or charity organizations like A Child's Light. We're very supportive of Dom's Bikes. We're going to give him a tent this year. We're very excited about what he's been doing, and I'm a new member of the board of now the Paoli Business and Professionals Association. So I've had a real opportunity to meet them and really get to know them, and I'm grateful for the work that they're doing. And we are also a nonprofit event, a nonprofit organization, 501c3. And we also, for your own information, we do carry our own liability, directors and officers, and alcohol liability insurance as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Motion to authorize purchase of sewer video inspection camera. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Staff is requesting board's approval for the purchase of a second video camera for the underground inspection unit. With the increased use of the camera of inspections, currently when we have an issue with the camera, we need to take it to Chambersburg, Pennsylvania for repairs, causing downtime and not being able to finish the inspections. The cost of this camera from Tri-State Environmental Services through the CoSTARS program is $61,445, which was included in the 2024 sanitary sewer budget. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Do I have a motion?
So, second.
Any supervisor questions or comments? Any public?
So I had one question, which is, on the first camera, how often has it needed repair?
Since we're using it more, I want to say every other month.
Okay, and that's for like every 5,000 or 10,000 feet of inspection?
I really can't tell you the footage of it. Probably, we go at least once or twice a week with it. So figure once a month, once every other month, we do have a problem with it, so.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question on the new camera? Is there a warranty on it, and how long would that warranty be? And if something goes wrong with it, will they, give us a new one, or how's that going to work?
They've been very good in standing behind us when we do go up there. If they can't fix it on site right away, they give us a loaner. So they've been very good. We do get a 1-year warranty with the camera.
Can we buy an extension warranty? Is there
There is no extension warranty due to the conditions it's in on a regular basis, to put it nicely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Any other questions? Any public questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have an escrow release. Motion to approve the final escrow release for Devon Prep School athletic field. Mr. Burgo.
Chairman Miller and members of the board, this release this evening is for $140,000, $198.64. This is a final release for the Devon Preparatory School project. It had the athletic fields that were built, as well as a building. This covers the remaining items: grading, seeding, converting the existing stormwater basin, some landscaping, 10-foot wide concrete path, as well as the remaining contingency and items that were in the escrow. It has been inspected, and we are making a recommendation to the board for that final release this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Burgo. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Hear a second?
Second.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is a motion to authorize PennDOT to put pavement markings on township roads. Mr. Burgo.
Chairman Miller and members of the board, this request is actually from PennDOT. They, as part of their Highway Safety Improvement Project, their HSIP on-demand contract in the area, they are doing work to low-cost safety improvements on a variety of roads in the area. Specifically, this one is for Diamond Rock Road and Clothier Springs, right at the border of Tredyffrin and Schuylkill Townships. This work is being completed by PennDOT at no cost to the township, and it will involve basically low-cost improvements, but they're safety improvements, things like signage and pavement markings. In Tredyffrin Township, there will be 2 white stop bars shown on the plans that were included at Clothier Springs Road, which is a township road at Diamond Rock, one on Horseshoe Trail at the intersection, and a 50-foot section of yellow striping on Clothier Springs. Any of the work done will be done by PennDOT, and on our roads will be maintained by the Township Public Works staff in the future, or the Township, as we are on any of our local roads today. So PennDOT's asking for the board's authorization for that to be done on the township roads, and just acknowledgement that we will be maintaining it in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Burgo. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions from the board?
Sure. So I think this is a worthwhile project. I used to drive on those roads when I worked up in Collegeville some years ago, and certainly some of those roads can be dangerous because people don't necessarily stop when they come down. But I do have a question for Mr. Fitzgerald, which is that when PennDOT does, obviously when we do maintenance of these, that requires effort on our part. Are you comfortable with the method or what the technology or whatever they're using to put the markers in and so on? Is this something that is standard that you're comfortable with maintaining?
Usually they'll use thermoplast, which will last a lot longer than paint and stuff, so it should be good, especially on a low road, probably 3 to 4 years before we'd have to go up there and do anything.
Thank you.
And this is something we can maintain ourselves?
Yes, we have a thermoplast machine, and if not, we can just paint it, but we try to thermoplast as much as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. All in favor? Any public comment? I'm sorry. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Motion carries. Next, this is, as you know, the meetings, we have to discuss things in public, so we don't have we don't have the sunshine law, so we have meetings in public, so we have our discussions in public. So the next item on the agenda is a discussion of a letter agreement between Tredyffrin Township, PEMA, and the PA Historic Preservation Office for the mitigation plan associated with 1289 Yellow Springs Road. I'm going to start with Mr. Burgo to introduce the topic, and then we'll talk about it.
Chairman Miller and members of the board, the letter agreement that was sent to the township is dated February 13th, 2024. It's from the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. So the property at 1289 Yellow Springs is one of a handful of properties that had been part of asking the township to be their kind of go-between between FEMA for potential buyouts. They have suffered some flood damages in the past, most severely in 2021, and they were one of the properties that we have basically put an application to FEMA on. So right now, they're in the process, and as part of that process, there were some environmental and historic concerns that were generated relating to that property. And this letter kind of goes back to a meeting that the environmental folks had last summer, and it identified some additional items that basically the township would be responsible to work on providing data on basically historic documentation of the property there, and also some historic like the Historic Commission training, and it also identified saving of an existing in-stream swimming pond, pool that was there as well as part of the process. And FEMA has identified that there are costs associated with that, and they have emailed the township manager and myself saying that those costs would be recoverable as part of that process.
So when you say recoverable, is that recoverable after we spend the money, or recoverable after the house is purchased, or when do we get the money back?
The money,
and how much are we talking about?
I mean, I think FEMA had a total, for the various items, I think FEMA had sent an email saying there was over $180,000, I think, available for those costs. They're yet to be determined. There's no proposals with any documented cost yet for the various items. For the historic documentation, you'd have to hire a certified contractor to do that, and that report would have to be documented in interior, exterior of the property, and that has to be sent to the various historic and folks in government to basically go through. There might be some iterations with that process until they finalize it. There's some time frames for when that would have to be done included in the letter as well. The training for the historic commission, there are a certified consultant that would have to be hired to do that training. They've identified that in the letter as well. So those costs would still be determined. And then also the in-stream swimming pool that they claim is historic, we've identified that there are some masonry repairs that are necessary to that structure. So once again, undetermined total cost, but there is some cost that would have to be yet to be determined. So those fees, they've indicated that they would be recoverable as part of the final process. They won't be paid up front. It would be back half after, after a offer would be made for the acquisition of the property, which is still to be determined.
So will we know what those
Steve,
before we would have to sign the letter? Like, can we go to a consultant and find out some of the information before we sign this letter?
Procedurally wise, I mean, at this point, this is on for discussion tonight, and I think, FEMA had most recently, I think, gotten in touch with Mr. Martin and myself saying, where they're asking for us to sign the board, for this to be signed. The reason why we have it on for discussion, because there's time and there's money here, so we have to figure out what those would be. So yes, that could be the case. You could get proposals for those particular things, figure out what those costs are. That could be one of those ways to do that. I just want to also caution, the property in this one has not been obligated for funding yet. It's still in that process with FEMA.
And one of the things they're requesting is that we sign this so that will allow them to be obligated for funding. Again, it all depends on what they're going to offer for the final purchase. We will have to expend the funds up front, and we're taking the risk that the homeowner may or may not sign at the end. But if they do, then these costs, quote unquote, should be covered. To your other question about what will need to be done, I was hoping, I think Rob Williams was at the meeting with Mr. Duraco. If they would take the laboring order to get the two consultants, we're not sure even where to find them to specifically do this work for us. We can get that proposal hopefully by the April meeting, so we'll have some number on what's this mean in real dollars. So you do need that information, I think, before you make a final decision.
And is the timing reasonable too? I mean, I understand the letter has specific timeframes in which this stuff has to get done, right?
Correct, which is why tonight was discussion. We're not going to approve it or ask you to sign it, because once we do sign it, that first 90-day clock will start clicking.
Rob, do you have anything you want to add to the discussion? I'm sorry, Murph, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Bill or Steve, you're using the term recoverable. I mean, I would like a letter to say, pick a number or don't pick a number, that we will be reimbursed. We will be we will be reimbursed. Something that's more definitive. I don't know, or maybe that's what it'll say, and you were using recoverable just as a term, because I can see things happening here that we wouldn't be too happy with, basically.
Yeah, so Mr. Berger and I Mr. Berger and I have gone back and forth with the historic representative of the state. The only thing they will say is there's $182,000 in the part of the fund that will cover, quote unquote, this cost along with the repairs and other things, but we don't know how much the consultant and historic surveys and training are going to cost us yet until someone actually engages them. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I hear that, but that uncertainty troubles me a little bit. But maybe if we go further down here, it won't. But it would be nice to hear the term we would be reimbursed funds expended on this, so.
Murph, one thing I would add is from the email that we have received from Richard Deal from the Deputy State Hazard Mitigation Officer, he did provide an email that FEMA is authorized to allow approximately $182,000 for the EHP expenditures for the project. So it's still not finalized on how that process will work. We've been doing this for a couple of years for these various properties. I think we started this process in 2021. So it's not a simple, straightforward process. It takes some time to go through. But it sounds like he does use the word reimbursed from the grant. So, and he also mentioned that he mentions possibility of an advancement of that, but it sounds like it's more reimbursement. So, and that's more with the program too, is as we said, as they go through the project, once they get obligated, there's still administrative processes that have to go through because FEMA will turn it over to the state. So you'll have the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Association, and that could take anywhere from 4 to 6 months to do all the administrative work. So there's still some process that goes in there, but they are saying that there will be reimbursement up to that amount of money. Then I think the proposals would basically need to be, had to determine what those actual costs are, because there's 3 different costs in there. There's the cost, as we said, for the training, there's the cost for the documentation of the historic, property, and then there's the cost for any repairs to the existing structure that's in stream. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Bill.
Yes, Steve, do I understand from this that, so we would do the training, the documentation, the repairs, we'd spend this money, they would then provide a buyout proposal to the homeowners. If the homeowners didn't accept that buyout offer, we would not get reimbursed. Is that correct, or am I not hearing all this? Maybe I'm reading between lines, or?
So generally, the final stop is with the homeowner. They have to accept once it's obligated, we've committed to our part of the study, they have to agree to the sale of their property, and they could say no at the final stage, absolutely. And then we wouldn't, the money is spent somewhere else. But our cost for whatever study we did for the historic part would be sunk cost.
So they don't sign the letter and then they get the buyout offer and then they either say yes or no. That's not the way it works. So we would.
Unfortunately, because it's a historic property, they want that up front, committed from the township. I mean, 9 times out of 10, if people are moving down this process, they usually will take it, but there's no guarantee on what that amount will be if it's acceptable to the homeowner.
I'm sorry, Rob.
I had a comment, but perhaps I'll give Mr. Williams a chance to speak, and then I'll speak after that.
Thank you. This property came to the attention of the Historic Commission last summer. As Mr. Burgo said, this property had been part of a FEMA process for years, and the only reason it came up during the summer last year was because the historic preservation folks within FEMA did a study on this property and determined that it was significantly historic, such that it could have been recommended for the National Register of Historic Places. Turns out that it is not on our 2003 survey because it's a 20th century building, and our survey really focuses on 17th century and early 18th century. So this actually wasn't even a property that we were aware of until we got the FEMA letter. We worked with a separate division of FEMA than what Mr. Burgo works with. And their process is if FEMA and federal money is being used to take down a historic resource like this, then there is a mitigation. There are treatments that can be paid for as part of it. There was a long list of possibilities, and through the summer, we had the Historic Society, we had the Preservation Trust, we had Native American tribes. There was a lot of folks involved in the discussions. We came down to these 2 treatments of what they call recordation and the training, and then later the addition of the pools. It's our understanding that this is all contingent on the property being acquired and demolished, and that these treatments aren't, now that's my understanding working with my part of the FEMA crowd. As far as finding the consultants, we can find those through our help with the state and the county preservation offices. They know the people to talk to. These are credentialed people. As far as going through a process with an RFP, we know how to do that. But we've never had an experience with this kind of work. So how much the services are, I don't know. That was never part of the discussion last year until they presented this letter to the township.
So I have actually, I was out there after the big landslide a couple years ago, and actually went and saw the property and went inside the house, and I would say there was over 100 tons of rock that came crashing down the hill, and the mud actually burst into the house, went almost up to the kitchen counters and carried the back door down the hill. So it was quite a disaster. And this was the second time that something like this had happened in this house. This house was built in the 1930s, as I understand. And in 2014, the residents apparently had to be rescued from the second floor. And he told me how a firefighter had to actually carry a dog down the ladder to save the dog. And it doesn't, if you go look out there, it doesn't seem to be a property that's located, it's not in a floodplain, but it's at the bottom of a hill where there's a stream coming down. And I went and looked at satellite images of the area and looked at the topo maps, and it seems to me that there have been a couple of developments up on top of the hill that significantly took down trees, and that probably was, and that in conjunction with the latest 1,000-year storm that we've had, brought the landslide down. And to me, unless there is a significant amount of effort put into remediating things, like a couple hundred feet up the hill, that the next big storm that puts a few inches of rain in a 24-hour period is just going to bring another cascade of rocks and mud down the hill again. And I think that it's going to be extremely hard from an engineering point of view to save the property. So at this point, probably documenting it is the best thing that can be done if it has historic value. I met the owners, and it's been a couple of years since I met the owners, but at the time, they had certainly indicated that it was their desire to take the FEMA buyout and to move on with their lives.
What's the current status of the house? Is anybody living there? Has it been repaired? Is it just boarded up? What's going on there?
As far as I know, the resident is not currently living there, but I mean, we would have to check with them just to verify, but the last we talked with them, they were not still residing at the house.
Yeah, last I talked with them, they would move to Westchester.
I'm just wondering if it's just got flooded and they left, moved out and boarded it up, or what its status is. Like, is it? We should just find that out for when we vote. I'd just love to know kind of what is going on with that house, or do you know?
Yeah, I was there about 2 weeks ago. It stands like any other house. There's no boarding up. The property is clean, as Supervisor Bhaskar said. It had a huge debris field in front of it after the hurricane, but it's all clean now. Sadly, it looks great. And unfortunately, it's a acquire and demolish property according to FEMA. So,
if I may, just to add a little context, this house was purchased in October 2014 for $1.25 million. My understanding is that it was back up on the market at the end of 2022 for $2 million plus, and then quickly withdrawn from the market. At one point, this board decided to support the FEMA application to have the property purchased by the federal government, and I guess those figures are being determined right now what the offer is going to be. Since that letter has gone to FEMA, a new board has been elected in Tredyffrin, and my question is, what would happen if this board decided to withdraw that support for the FEMA application? Does anybody have an answer to that?
I would ask our solicitor to address that.
I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Holt. We actually talked a little bit about that offline with Steve Burgo today. we haven't had that situation during my time here, to be honest with you. I think, given the time that has passed and the conversations that may have occurred to date with the township and the homeowners, I would be a little concerned. My gut reaction would say I'd be a little concerned backing out. But I don't know the answer to that. I'd rather look into it and give you a more educated answer rather than shooting off the cuff right now, to be honest.
Thank you. So here's what I would propose. I mean, Rob, if you can work with Steve and I on at least getting us a quote for the two of those parts 1 and 2, the inventory and the training, so at least we have a number. We know what our commitment is, and then Steve, if you can get a ballpark number for the repair from Princeton Hydro or one of our consultants that does that kind of work, and we'll be able to, in April, have some hard numbers, or at least semi-hard numbers on those 3 items, and then it will help you, I think, make a better decision. You'll know at least what you'd be looking at if you continue down. And if you do, there's a good chance that it'll be recovered, but there's no way to guarantee. So I think that'll help you make a better informed decision.
I think we want to add the question that Matt Supervisor Holt just asked Pat, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. But as part of that, I figured we might as well have those numbers for you as well.
For sure, no, thank you, thank you. Any public comment? Thank you. That concludes that discussion. For new matters, any board member new matters?
Yeah, I have a board member new matter.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was remiss earlier. I had promised Anne Murphy of the EAC that I would announce the lecture on the importance of how to care for big trees, and the importance of and how to care for big trees. And it is being conducted in partnership with the Tredyffrin Public Library on Wednesday, April 10th at 7 p.m. And unfortunately, there's online information. There was a flyer at the back of the room earlier in the meeting, but since I didn't announce it, the flyer has gone along with Miss Murphy. But please do attend. Trees are an important part of our heritage, and we do need to recognize them and know how to care for them.
Thank you, Supervisor Bhaskar. Any other supervisory matters?
I do.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure or unpleasure. On Friday, I got a call from some of my constituents in Mount Pleasant. And I also had gotten an email from some of the constituents in reference to a day party. That's the only way I'm going to describe it, of young people partying at 12 o'clock in the afternoon in the residential area in a house that a bunch of college students live in. And the police had to be called to come. And it was a little crazy because they didn't understand, or I don't know if they did understand, that the house is in a residential area. They put a tarp up. They were having Uber drivers drop off children with 6-packs and things of that nature. And the young man came out and explained himself, and I happened to be there because I got a phone call, so I went. At first he was a little taken aback by me because he was like, well, do I have to talk to her? And I'm like, no, you don't. But I am the supervisor and I need to know who owns this property. And at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, you're having this day party and the Uber drivers are dropping off children, because they are children. So that is something that I wanted to bring to us to maybe talk about. I know it's a residential area and I know people, can rent their property to whoever they choose to, but that is something I'm very concerned about, because if something happens to any of those children, or if something happens in the neighborhood, then, their parents may come back and look at us, even though, well, why did you let something happen? The other thing about that area too is, I wonder if, and this may have to go to Steve, to see about getting some speed bumps. While I was sitting there, I seen folks zip up and down the road, just like they were on Upper Gulf Road. And it is a residential area. There are little children out there riding their bikes and things of that nature. The constituents told me they had asked for them before, and they were told that the street was too small to be able to put some speed bumps, which I think is kind of strange, because I've been in other areas around here. They're not Tredyffrin, they belong to Radnor, but the street is kind of the same, and there were speed bumps, and so that's something that I wanted to bring. It's on Mount Pleasant, and to see if that is a possibility. If I can have somebody go out and look and see if we can put some there.
One thing I would say is maybe they could go to the traffic committee, and then we could have the discussion with the traffic committee. Typically, we don't have speed bumps on a lot of different roads, but for those kind of safety issues on roadways, especially if people have concerns about, children and walking and other safety with people going through, we could certainly have that discussion at a future traffic committee meeting, so they could get on the agenda and come in to talk to the committee. We have a variety of folks there from the police department, engineering, public works there, so we could kind of go over their concerns and see what options could be, out there.
Okay.
Traffic committee meetings Wednesday morning this week.
It's 7. Is that the meeting at 7 o'clock?
Yep. 7:30. No, 7:30.
Here, or is it online? Can they zoom in if they can't come?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know about that.
I don't think we have Zoom for the.
Okay, so 7:30 here on Wednesday.
Is it in this room or the other room? This room. Okay, good. All right.
That's all I got for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other supervisor new business? Any resident new business?
Good evening again. Arthur Zadrozny, still at 16 Painters Lane. I want to share a concern, and I want to start with a very general question you may or may not have the answer to. Does the township have a mission statement? I did a right-to-know request about this a couple of weeks ago, and I'll explain to you what brought me to ask that question. And what I learned is the township does not. And the reason that I was prompted to ask this question was things that have been happening in the community where I live in Chesterbrook over the last several years. I moved here, it's been 11 years now, and when I came to Chesterbrook, it was for two reasons. One, I found a house that I thought I could live out the rest of my life in, and two, the quality of life in the Chesterbrook Tredyffrin community is superior to any's around. Sadly, things that have been happening have been eroding that quality of life. A couple of years ago, I awoke one night to find a huge parking garage across the woods from where I live in Painters Lane that was illuminated to the point where it would make Steven Spielberg's Close Encounter of a Third Kind, gasp. Supervisor Miller was kind enough to actually come over to my house and observe this. And when I called to find out how something like this could have been built, I was told a decision had been made by a prior zoning person, and this is what it was, and I had to live with it. Thankfully, I've been able to reach out to the property management company, and appealing to them in a neighborly way, they've been able to tone down the lights. So problem resolved, but still, how did it get that bad? We have other issues. We have what used to be might have been a historic barn in the Chase Road pool property. That property stands, torn down now. There's construction equipment there, and residents are having to put up with a gated, property there. And I understand a lot of legal issues here, but still, how did we get to this point where we are living with this situation? On a much smaller level, there's a bridge that was washed out in the floodwaters coming off the Wilson Farm Park, right within the Duportail community in Chesterbrook. And we've been working for the last several years to try and find out who's responsible for replacing it, how's it going to get fixed. In the meantime, I watch young families with strollers trying to get across Chesterbrook Boulevard. They can't use the bridge. They don't want to take the stroller through the creek bed, so they have to go across busy Chesterbrook Boulevard. And now I have my own neighborhood embroiled in a dispute over, again, lighting with the picket posts. People wanting to put up more paddle courts and cut down trees and have even more light shining into our neighborhood. The reason I come back to the mission statement, if there was one, I would hope that it would include many things, including maintaining the quality of life for the residents for us here in Chesterbrook, because that's what we're here about. And I know you're all largely volunteers. I appreciate you get a nominal compensation, but I appreciate the volunteer time you put in, and there's a lot of things out there. But there are those of us that are trying to make sure that little things don't fall through the cracks as well. I served on the school board in Westchester. I know sometimes you get admired in making sure we're following the rules, but maybe the rules need to be, maybe we need to step back and look at the rules again and say, do we have all the right rules? Has our community grown in a way that we're no longer able to get our arms around it? We're certainly seeing a lot of changes. So I just kind of put that out there as a thought for people to consider. Appreciate what you do try and do, and hopefully we can keep things good and maybe even keep them better in the future. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Art. That was very, very helpful. Good.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I don't know that we have a mission statement, but our comprehensive plan is a nice guiding document that kind of sets a lot of those things. Yeah, and I think that's available online.
Thank you. Any other public citizen new business?
Again, I was here about a year ago or a little bit less. We were talking about gas-powered leaf blowers all through the neighborhood.
I'm sorry, we need your name and address. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Sharon Eisenhower, 235 Rosedale Avenue in Stratford. Okay, so I have some neighbors here and they want to say a few words because I said a few words last time. Is it okay? We have a small band of people, not very well organized, but we're getting more and more organized. You did recommend that we go to the EAC, which we did. So it's moving, and there's a lot of support for some kind of control over these animals in our neighborhoods. But we have put together a little handout just for some information for landscaping companies, and I've been handing this out just real close by, people that are working on our street and the next street or whatever. I put one in on the driver's seat in a landscaping truck the other day. They were out there making a lot of noise. I couldn't see anybody, but his window was open, so I said, here, would you like to read this? So may I give you a copy of these?
Sure.
For the record, I print out a couple.
I don't know if it's for the record, but yeah, if you have it electronically, that would be even easier.
I can do that.
I mean, I'll take a paper copy, but
Okay.
But if you have it electronically, then we can all get it, since you only have, yeah. All right, thanks.
And then one of our group translated it into Spanish as well. So everybody, who is also impacted can read exactly what we said in Spanish. All right, so there's that, and we would just love to know what else can we do, or what can you do, or how can we work together on moving forward and getting rid of these things, or the gas-powered ones, of course. So we have some other neighbors who want to say hi.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
I wasn't on the board at the time, so can you give me a quick 20-second elevator speech? And when you're talking about the gas blowers, is it that you don't want them used, or is there a particular time that you would like for them to?
Well, time would be great, but it's the noise factor and the pollution factor that are the big factors for the gas-powered leaf blowers. And I have some statistics in there that I don't remember off the top of my head as far as, the amount of pollution that they put out and the noise pollution. And it's impacting a lot of us, and I mentioned this before, who work, and more of us do now, who work at home. And that stuff is I do recordings and I do interviews across the country. Sometimes I can't do it because the noise is that much. So, that's just a little piece of it.
So is it that you want to, what is it that you would like for the board to be able to do? Is it to ask the landscapers to change to electric, or
Yeah, the movement across the country in many municipalities is towards electric and away from the gas-powered, the two-stroke engines, the ones that are really, really loud. And so that's the movement that's happening, and it's all grassroots and people that are just sort of fed up with it. And yes, that bothers me too. And what can we do? So it's moving towards battery-powered. and electric, and we know, there's going to be a curve because it'll be a while before it's affordable or cost-effective for the landscapers to, embrace this new technology, new technology for them, I should say. So that's sort of what we're trying to. My pleasure. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. There's someone else in the back wants to talk?
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Robert Bruner. These microphones are pretty good, actually. 209 Hunters Lane, Tredyffrin, Devon. So I was going to talk about leaf blowers as well. I did put some notes together. So I was a field engineer for Underwriters Laboratories for 36 years and a supervisor in the Philadelphia area. So we did a lot of testing for public safety. So a lot of this stuff, and as the other gentleman said, the quality of life here seems to be going down with some of these things. So what's wrong with gas-powered leaf blowers, you ask? Well, there's hardly any regulation about them, right? So when cars first came in, the state of Oregon in 1905 passed a law, and there was hardly any cars then, right? Passed a law that they had to have mufflers to prevent the noise, because it was a big impact in noise when all you had was horses back then. And then in 1962, the catalytic muffler was invented by a fellow. In 1970, Richard Nixon passed into law that all the automobiles had to have that. And what did the catalytic converter do? It eliminated almost all of the hydrocarbon and carbon dioxide emissions in cars. So at this point, there was a study in 2011 that said if you operate a gas-powered leaf blower for 30 minutes, it's comparable to the amount of pollution emitted by a Ford 150 pickup truck driving from Texas to Alaska. That's 30 minutes worth of it. So why is there no regulation on those kind of things if you have to do it for cars when it's just as much pollution? So the typical gas-powered leaf blower noises out around 95 decibels. Anything over 85 is harmful to your ears. And like the crew next door that comes into our neighbors, it's not one gas-powered leaf blower. There's a team of 5 of them. And when they're done mowing, they all put their backpacks on and they start from one end of the lawn and go through it. It takes almost an hour with 5 of these things going. Talk about noise. The Grinch would even be unhappy with the noise. So in addition to the adverse health effects of carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, hydrocarbons, particulates generated in the exhaust of leaf blowers, there's also dust clouds caused by leaf blowers because they are really powerful, right? And they contain potentially harmful substances in these dust things they put up with pesticides, fecal matter from animals, mold. And, there's a lot of places that have passed it. Washington, D.C. passed, the whole place passed a ban on gas-powered leaf blowers in 2018. And California's banning the sale of them this year. So anyway, I just think it's time for PA to get on board here because it's been an awful long time. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. No, super interesting. Could you send that to us? Your little write-up?
My little write-up? Sure.
Yeah. You had some facts that were interesting. So yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, you're welcome.
Any more public comment?
Hello. I live 942 Mount Pleasant Avenue. Danielle Galloway. I'm sorry. Oh. Can you hear me now? Okay. So my issue is that, okay, so now that I work from home, My problem is the delivery drivers that come down the street and they turn around their big trucks in our driveways. Now, we have a turnaround down at the bottom of the street, and they refuse to do this. I had a pole that was in my driveway. It was a little, down in the driveway, because I have a joint driveway, a shared driveway, I should say. 2 FedEx trucks damaged it, and another truck damaged it, where I had to have it torn out. So, but there's no signage on our street to say that there's a turnaround down at the bottom of the street, or none of it. And all of these trucks just use everyone's driveways to turn around whenever they make deliveries. Is there any way of getting a sign put on our street?
I would again recommend going to the traffic committee for any kind of signage or road changes like that. It really needs to go through the traffic committee. Our police are there and they can make sure it lines up with all the rules and standards. So it sounds like it's Wednesday, 7:30 a.m. here.
Okay.
You can also, on our website, if you go to the traffic committee board, you can click for an email, and that, I think, goes to the full traffic committee. So if you can't make the meeting, I wouldn't wait the whole time until the next one. I would send an email.
Okay.
And get the conversation started.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment? Do I have a motion to end the meeting?
So moved.
A second? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you very much.